Do you ever look back on your childhood and think about those things that really embarrassed you about your parents, and now you're like, you know, they were really cool, what was I thinking? And I do that a lot with my mom. She was an opera singer. She wore leather pants and high heels to PTA meetings and mortified me as a kid. Now I think, you know, she was super cool. But not so much this one thing. It was a cake, and it was my mother's most famous cake. And everyone called it something that mortified me as a child and now. And they all called it the orgasm cake. And I can't abide by that. Not as a child, not as an adult. So I call this the Helga Cake, because that was my mom's name, and it was her famous cake. So now, you don't have to call it the orgasm cake. Please call it the Helga Cake. It's one of the best cakes ever. And this is what it consists of. It's gluten-free. And that means that it has no flour, and it uses pecans instead of flour as that kind of base to keep the cake, you know, give it structure. And what I've put into this little Cuisinart is 12 ounces of pecans, a half a cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of vanilla. And then I ground it up a little. And to that I'm going to add 2 eggs, 2 whole eggs, and then I separated 8 eggs. And I put the egg whites in here, and I put the egg yolks in here. And I'm going to put all the egg yolks into my Cuisinart and let it get all incorporated and mixed. Woohoo! Over here I've put the 8 egg whites, and I've put a whisk attachment, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to beat them until they're stiff and white and foamy. And here we go. Okay, so you don't want them to be broken up yet. You want them to have this great consistency, light and fluffy. And to that, I will add another half cup of sugar. So the recipe all in all requires a full cup of sugar, but I get confused a lot of the time and I forget and I dump all of my sugar in this. I always now divide it. Half cup in a little bowl that I add to my pecans, half cup that I'll put on a little piece of parchment like this. So this is your handy dandy trick of the day. And I fold it over so it's easily pourable into my egg whites. So you want to start these, and I do it on medium, otherwise the sugar is just going to go fly all over your face and you're going to have to go to the doctor because you've got a big kernel in your eyeball. So let's start it up. Let's go. You're going to do this until it's white and shiny is the key, and that means that it's ready to be incorporated. Let's do some more. Shiny. So now we're going to move our paste into this big bowl. Make sure the bowl is big enough so that it can incorporate both the paste and the egg whites, because when you start folding it in there, you don't want all of your beautiful batter flopping off onto the table. No good. And I think this is big enough for a doubled recipe. You know, be really careful too with the blade. I once really almost cut my thumb off with the Cuisinart blade. I had to go to the hospital. I wore a bandage on it for, I swear, half a year. My nickname for that whole year was Psycho Thumb, because I wouldn't take off the bandage because it was so ugly. So you don't want to be a Psycho Thumb. Just be really careful with Cuisinart blades. They're deadly. When you're folding egg whites into a batter, the whole point is that you keep it really light. You're aerating the batter, light and fluffy. It makes for a lighter, spongier cake, and it's also kind of leavening. It makes, you know, and sometimes some of these cakes don't have like baking soda or baking powder, and the egg whites act as the rising agent, except for the first part. You add about 1/4 of the egg whites into your thick batter, and you mix it up like you would anything else. You're not so gentle because you want to lighten it, make it easier to incorporate the rest of the egg whites. So it lightens both in color and in texture, so the rest of the process is easier. Much easier. Then you can proceed with your remaining egg whites, gently folding. That doesn't mean you use your hands and fold it like a t-shirt. It means you use your nice big rubber spatula. That's the best thing to use. And then you make very slow motions, like you're folding the batter into the egg whites into the batter. It's a very beautiful thing. So I usually just use about half at first. And you'll notice that the egg whites in this case are a little chunky because there's not a ton of sugar in it. You still want to be gentle. Want to fold it in. Nice and light batter. Gentle, gentle. Ever so gentle. Always get the bottom of the bowl too, because you'll notice that a lot of the good stuff, the thick, oh, I already saw some. Some of the batter that's thicker will often just, it's not going to help you. You've got to do it yourself. So you've got to scoop it up, fold it in. Look for any white chunks of egg whites that haven't incorporated. Beautiful, nice, light. I've got a big fat oven and it takes big fat sheet pans. And this is what I do. I use a cake ring. I didn't say the other thing, I said cake ring. And then what you do is you put it on a parchment and you spray it like a mofo because it always sticks. If it's a thinner batter, if it's a little more runny, it doesn't work so well because since it doesn't have a bottom, it'll just like float out and you'll look in the oven and you'll go, why is half my cake outside of the ring? But if it's nice and fluffy like this, usually stays in, beautiful, gorgeous. You're set. So we should add, whoa, and you spread it out evenly. And you want to get the top kind of as flat as possible because it's not going to, like most cake batters, kind of level itself off. It'll maintain any peaks and valleys that are in it already. So you just want to level it off so it's nice and smooth. It won't find its own heel. More in this one. And then you put it in the oven. Half hour. You want to poke it a little, see if it springs back. One trick I always use is to use my ears. That sometimes you hear a crackly sound and it means it's not done yet. So the crackly is kind of those egg whites that go. Listen for that and poke it. Just don't burn your finger. Super duper trick number 2. Use a half sheet. This is what you have. For a normal oven, this is the right size. And you can get a half sheet pan that's actually bigger. This is what professionals use. So it doesn't have all those funny ridges. It actually has much more space to it, if that makes sense. It's called a half sheet pan. You can go to a restaurant supply store. They're great. They're heavy. Perfect. So line it with parchment. Spray the whole damn thing. Woo. And then put your batter here. Spread it out. Now the options for doing this are many. You could actually make a rectangle shaped cake. The thing that I really love to do though is use these. This is something that professional bakers use, but they're available to home bakers. It's, they're these things that are beautiful, they're fun, they make desserts look so professional and beautiful and really fancy without a lot of work. And all you have to do is bake it on this beautiful sheet, and then afterwards you stamp out your cake. So you have a heart-shaped cake, and you leave the cake inside there, and then you build it. You put your frosting there, put another layer of cake, and you end up having this sweet little individual sized cake that looks like you got it in some gorgeous bakery and then you made it yourself. Looks like you put a lot of work into it, but you didn't at all. All you did was use a mold that usually only professional bakers have. And there are plenty of places to get them. You just go online and you look for cake molds, heart, circle, There are plenty of places. I recommend getting them. So this is chocolate buttercream a la Helga, and it's a really unorthodox version of buttercream because it's all made in the Cuisinart. When she was doing it, it was in a blender. But I think it's super cool because it's really fast, and I think it's, in my opinion, the best chocolate buttercream I've ever had in my life. Now, this is one caution I'll give you, is that there are 8 egg yolks in here, and we're just going to heat them up with hot coffee. Now, whether that guarantees that the bacteria is killed or not, I don't know. I've never gotten sick, but if you're pregnant or have ill health, I probably wouldn't recommend doing this. But I would put in here 12 ounces of the best bittersweet chocolate you can find, chopped up really fine, or chips, 2 sticks of butter, 8 egg yolks, and about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And what you saw me put in there was vanilla bean paste, which is a combination of the vanilla bean pod and the extract. And it's my favorite thing. It imparts great flavor. And what we're going to do is we're going to start this up. It's going to be really, really loud. So before I start it up, I'll tell you what we're going to add to it as it's moving to melt everything together. A half a cup of very strong and very hot coffee. Ready? Ready? Ah! Okay. So you know how I doubled up the recipe for the cake? Don't double up the recipe for the chocolate buttercream, because what'll happen is that the chocolate won't melt well and it'll just become chunky and a disaster. So in this case, you would just make 2 separate batches. You saw how easy it was. It takes 2 seconds. Just don't double up on it, because then you'll have a disaster and it won't look like this luxurious gorgeousness that it is.